Make sure connect. All right, we're good. Welcome, everyone. How's everyone doing? Welcome to our Week 9 preview show. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marsilio Langella. Mars, we are in semifinals week for Section 1 and championship week for the Hudson Valley Football League. So we're really getting into the thick of things. Next week is the section title games over at Mayapack, and the Hudson Valley Football League champion will be decided. How's it going, man?
Going pretty well. I mean, dude, we're finally in the thick of things, and we've obviously had some really good games in the playoffs, and now it's going to be that the semis, and I think it's really going to be exciting as we get closer to that section championship.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, this is going to be an interesting week. I mean, there's going to be some rematches. There's going to be some, I'm pretty sure that actually everyone has played each other at least once in the regular season here. So pretty wild. So it's a lot of rematches on a path to get to the section title game. And just want to welcome our audience. Appreciate you guys. As always, make sure if you haven't done so, hit that thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, hit that sub button. I don't know why. I mean, this is the best voices in Section 1 football. So hit that sub button. We're reaching the end here. And share it out to people. We really do appreciate when we get some shares from folks. And as we get going, if you weren't here last week, we're going to put up some polls when we start talking about the games on who you think is going to be some flash polls on who you think are going to win these semifinal games. And then what we'll do is, we'll do that. So once we start talking about the games, Mars will put up the polls. And if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. So with that, let's talk about last week, Mars, as people start funneling in. And I had a pretty good week last week, Mars. I went 17-0. I went undefeated. First time this season, which is great. Waiting all the way to the end. Mars went 14-2, which pushes my record 5-1 against you, Mars, with 2 pushes. So I won the season series this time around. And the winning percentage, though, is kind of the big thing that's focused on next, right? I'm at 77%. Mars, you're at 73. I don't know if we can hit that 80%, one of us. So it's going to be interesting here. Hopefully we can both get over 75. At least we'll match last year's, where if we can both get over 75, that'd be great. Correct. With that said,
I mean,
go ahead, Mars.
I mean, we actually have been hitting it pretty well. I wonder if people out there can figure out if we are doing better than Devaney and Lohud, or if we're on the same level.
And I'd have to go back.
I don't think we're doing worse.
I'd have to go back and look through everything, and I'll be honest, I don't have that kind of time. So maybe someone in chat can let us know how that's going. But all in good fun. But with that, let's talk about Double A. We'll start with Double A. We'll go down to the Hudson Valley Football League last. We have some film that we're going to try to do, and hopefully YouTube and my computer allow me to. But let's start off with the semifinals in Double A. And let me put up the schedule here. And I was going to use one of G. Harris's 2K's visuals, but it just came out a little blurry. And I think I used him for A. We'll show him for A. But he makes some nice visuals for Double A and A. Couldn't really use it because it came out a little blurry when I tried to grab it. So we're using the old style. So the Double A matchups, we're going to start the first one. Number 4 seed Carmel, who's 5-3, and number 1 seed North Rockland, who is 7-2. And these two teams played each other week 4, where North Rockland won 37-27. It was a close game for a while. Warloo got hurt for Carmel in that game. And then North Rockland pulled away at the end to win by 10. But let's start with the away team, Mars. And when we talk about Carmel, to get here, they won 33-27 versus Arlington, and they won late in the fourth quarter. Another very entertaining game, a lot of offense, a lot of big plays, and they made it now to the semifinals for the 4th straight year, with the chance to make the section title for 4 straight years. So unprecedented territory for the Carmel program, and they're on their 3rd head coach in the last 3 years, right? So they're constantly competing here. But when you look at this offense, and without question, out of the final four teams here, this is the best pass attack of the playoff team. And it starts with their quarterback in McGorry, who he had 3 passing touchdowns, did have 2 INTs last week, but the combination of him and guys like Connolly and White and Galbraith and Lupino, who had the game-winning touchdown last week, I believe, number 13, is a very potent offensive pass attack. And I was impressed with even with Hibbert running the football. He ran the ball hard. He had some big run plays. Tamba Casau is another guy who runs the football. And this offensive line has played pretty solid all year round. So they have a lot of weapons offensively, and then the coaches do a pretty good job of getting their guys in space. And this offense is really predicated off of play action and the RPO stuff to hit big plays. So that's going to be what they're going to attack North Rockland with. Yes, they can run they're going to try to run the ball, keep them balanced, but expect to see a lot of sprint outs. I think from Carmel, they had some success versus North Rockland last time doing that, the sprint out passes. And that RPO action where they're going to do some play action, they're going to try to attack down the field. But the most important thing for Carmel is, number one, avoiding sacks, right? This offensive line is going to be tested. North Rockland can generate a lot of sacks and turnovers. Those are going to be 2 huge things for Carmel going to this game offensively. Defensively, listen, last week, they also gave up a lot of big pass plays. They were attacked by the screen a lot, so they got to be much better on the screen. They gave up a lot of yards via the screen. But they were pretty solid versus the run, Mars. And this is an aggressive defense. They like to bring guys off the edges. They'll bring some linebackers, what they call bullet blitzes, where it'll be one backer going through one gap, or sometimes they'll do 2. But, the big thing to me is avoiding when they played North Rockland, which was good to see last week. They stopped the run well versus North Rockland last time they played Mars. Gave up over 200 yards rushing. So they have to be much better. Continue what they did last week against the run, but avoiding those big plays. They had big pass plays they gave up last week. Last time they played North Rockland, was a lot of big run plays. So that's going to be the big thing for Carmel, avoiding the speed of North Rockland getting to the outside. Thoughts, Mars, on Carmel?
Yeah, I feel like Carmel obviously had a strong win yesterday. Last week. And I feel like, yes, the offense is clicking. They've always been doing very well all year. I think defensively is really the biggest concern I have, especially heading into this game, because North Rockland has that high-powered offense that you get in space. Their speed is essentially unmatched to a lot of players or a lot of teams. And I just feel like Carmel's biggest struggle is going to be, like you said, limit the big plays, right? Try to prevent any sort of big gainers, right? If it's really, you want North Rockland to grind down the field, right? You want them to chip away and have the go all the way down the field in a long span of time in the hopes that they make a mistake, and that your defense can show up. But I feel like, it's going to be really interesting to see with how Carmel kind of reacts to this high-powered offense.
Yeah, and then we turn to North Rockland. And, they won 42-0 versus Ketchum. It was close in the first half, and then they really just exploded. And I got to give a lot of credit to North Rockland. This back-to-back 7-win seasons for the first time since 2012-2013. So, last week I reached out to Coach, talk about getting into the playoffs, and he talked about being, taking the right steps in the program, and that leads to results, because they're not result-oriented, they're program and process-oriented. But you have to see the results, right? At some point, you have to see those processes develop into results, and you're seeing that. Back-to-back 7-win seasons is a good thing, with a chance to go to a section title. So, huge opportunity here. They would have to beat, the section champs. So, major opportunity for them. Offensively, we know what they are. We've talked about it week in and week out. This is a big play offense. They like to use a lot of motions. They like to use a lot of shift. They like to mess with the defensive players' eyes and their discipline and create some leverage for their speedsters to get to the second level and get to the outside. And last week, Mars, they rushed for 230 yards. And that is led the way by their running back, Jaquan Johnson, who we know is an absolute stud. He had 84 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. And then that mixture of Lawrence at the wide receiver spot, who can also take handoffs, Jaslow, and their quarterback, Perini, who's going to be so important. He had a huge play-action touchdown pass versus Carmel last time. Carmel's going to be looking to be very aggressive and trying to bottle up Jaquan Johnson. There's going to be play-action opportunities. They gave up a lot of big pass plays last week. And the screen game, look for North Rockland, who does have screens in their arsenal, to try to test Carmel's discipline. Can they defend the screen? So I'm expecting to see, a lot of condensed formations, motions, trying to get Jaquan Johnson to the outside, and then if they're going to the spread stuff, look for the screen game. Look for some of the play action stuff to hit the ball down the field. To me, the thing is, listen, when they played Carmel last time, they had 2 40-plus yard touchdowns. So they can get to the second level. This is an offense that we know that there's not a lot of teams who can run with them defensively. Now, the question I have is the turnovers, because when North Rockland plays clean football, they win, right? When they don't play clean football, that's when you start seeing these games get a lot closer for them. So it's really about playing clean football on the offensive side. Defensively, they were great last week. I mean, they had 3+ sacks. They forced 4 turnovers that led to 3 defensive touchdowns, Mars. And obviously, this secondary, who I've praised, I think one of the best secondaries, arguably in Section 1, is going to be tested with the receivers of Carmel, right? Because they have weapons. And so it's going to be really important. They got hurt at times on those rollout passes. It's going to be so important for those defensive ends to keep contained. You don't want to see McGorry get to the outside because those lead to some big pass plays. And, for North Rockland, they tried to mix things up where they'll bring pressure, but also just rush 3 and drop 8. And to me, I don't think you can give McGorry a lot of time. So rushing 3, I get it. You want to create, 8 defensive backs. So it's hard to kind of throw with, not much space around. But a guy like McGorry who can bomb it around, to me, I want to get him on his backside, right? If I'm bringing, you can go into 3, but I'm looking to bring pressure and not allowing him to attack down the field for me. But we're going to see. I mean, Lawrence had 2 INTs last week, 1 for a touchdown. This is one of the better secondaries with St. Fleur, with Jaslow, and Jaquan Johnson. Thoughts on North Rockland, Mars? And while you give me your thoughts on them, you can also pick the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested in seeing how this North Rockland secondary is going to match up against this Carmel offensive pass attack, because that's obviously Carmel's best aspect right now, especially because Waterloo has been injured, and it's really just that's been how Carmel's been making all these massive plays. And so when I overall look at this game, I mean, Carmel obviously is defending champs, and you never can outlook Carmel because they could score a whole lot of points. Their defense has been struggling, but a really good offense in the playoffs can be very dangerous, because if you really get on a roll and it feels like nothing can stop you, that's a really tough thing to stop. And North Rockland feels like this has been their historic season, where they just feel like everything they wanted has been going their way. And on top of that, Carmel, you have to go into North Rockland, and we always forget to mention that, because playing in North Rockland is one of the most difficult things to do, right? And once you get across the that side of the
bridge,
that side of the bridge, it gets a little more dangerous. It gets a little more funky. So Carmel going over there is a little tough. So I think that being the case, I'm gonna go with North Rockland. I feel like their offense has been extremely dangerous. Carmel's defense has not been proven that they could stop really much so far this year. Their bread and butter has been trying to just outscore the opponents and run them out of the building. But I don't know how well you can do that against a North Rockland defense that is this good, especially with a secondary that has been proving that they are one of the best in Section 1. So I'm going to go with North Rockland here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to count Carmel out, right? They have just been a force, going to 4 straight semifinals with the opportunity to go to 4 straight section title games, winning the last 3. But with that said, I do really like the way North Rockland's defense has been playing the last few weeks. I mean, they have been really strong. They get after you. They have been forcing turnovers and generating a lot of pressure. And that's going to be so important in this game to get pressure on McGorry. And for Carmel, at times you can see this defense can be very aggressive and create negative plays, but just too often they give up big plays in the passing game one week, and it's big plays in the running game. And so, which defense is going to come up here? And guys like Jaquan Johnson, you just got to give him a little bit of room, and he can take a mile from you. So to me, with that said, I am going to go with North Rockland as well to win. All right, let's go to the other semifinals game, and that is the number 3 seed Mamaroneck at the number 2 seed Scarsdale. Mamaroneck is 6-3, Scarsdale is 7-1. Last time these guys played was a while back in week 1, big rivalry game where Scarsdale won 21-10, and that was at Mamaroneck. This time you're at Scarsdale. And let's start with the road team. For Mamaroneck, they won 35-20 versus Suffern last week, and the offense came to life. Ours and the big reason for that is that quarterback Jacobson is back, and you could obviously see that creates a whole new dynamic from Amerenik's offense. It was good to see him back. He went 5 for 7. They didn't ask him to do too much, right? He went 5 for 7, 51 yards and a touchdown. And they didn't ask him to do a lot throwing the football because they ran the ball very well. They ran for over 260 yards. And that was between Noah Kobe, Cooper, and Henry Bone. And so those guys did a really good job of running the ball, which opens up this pass attack. And their wide receiver, Davidson, who's been a big playmaker for them, had a touchdown reception and a rushing touchdown last week. And you got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line. I think they're one of the better units in AA. Now, I've talked about this previously, and talking about them last week during the playoffs, they needed to step up. They needed to control the line of scrimmage against Suffern, and they did. And that's going to be what's going to be so important against this Scarsdale defense that is really, really good. They're scrappy. They're not overly big, but they really get after you. And so they're going to have to run the ball again this time, which they really struggled last time. Last time they played Scarsdale, Mars, they had to pass 27 times, and they only rushed for 42 total yards. So to me, that's not, in my opinion, the formula. They got to be a little bit more balanced. They are going to probably have to throw more than they did last week because Scarsdale is tough to run against. But Scarsdale does a good job of forcing turnovers by their secondary. So that's going to be another really important thing, that this Mamaroneck offense be balanced, and having Jacobson back really does help that. I'm expecting to see again. I like last week also that they did a little bit of wildcat. They had their running back. They had Davidson in the backfield. He's one of your more explosive wide receivers. Get him involved in the running game, right? So doing some of the wildcat, doing some of the quarterback counters, the power read, and some of those sprint out pass plays, I think is something that you're going to see a lot of from this Mamaroneck offense. And that's going to be so important for them to show some balance this week. Defensively, listen, they had an INT. And the big thing for Mamaroneck is stopping the option, which last time they played, they struggled with. So I know that they see a lot of it because, right, they're rivals. They see a lot of the option from Scarsdale. But they have to do a much better job of defending it because they gave up, I think it was around 250 yards rushing from Scarsdale last time. They have to get Scarsdale in 3rd and 5+ yards. Scarsdale controlled the line of scrimmage last time they played. They controlled the time of possession last time they played. So it's going to be so important that not only, because you saw a lot of 5-man front, and I am going to show some film from Mamaroneck, and they were kind of tilting it towards the tight end, but Scarsdale did a really good job of, hey, we're going to run to the weak side, right, and then counter back towards the tight end. So they messed with the linebackers of Mamaroneck a lot. So this defense has to be much more disciplined defending that option at all 3 levels, the fullback starting, then the quarterback, then the pitch man. So going to be really important there to defend this option going into the second round this time. Thoughts on Mamaroneck, Mars, and then we'll go to Scarsdale and do some film.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Jacobson's back is obviously going to help their offense tremendously because, we saw them without him playing, and it was a bit rough. It was offensively. It was a little rough, right? And so obviously it kind of throws a wrench into the entire situation because now you're saying, well, is this going to be the Mamaroneck of old, where this was a close game last time they played?
It was close for a while until the 4th. It was 14-10.
Yeah. Yep. Or is it going to be the Mamaroneck that we saw a few weeks ago that can barely move the ball down the field, right? Yeah. So, and I agree with you. I feel like they're going to need to be able to mix it up. And I feel like I do like the whole Wildcat offense. I do like that they have quarterback runs and quarterback counters. And I feel like that does open up the offense more. But like you said, it's about responsibility football and defense and playing against Scarsdale, who kind of ran around them, right?
Yeah.
If he just ran through them or ran around them, it's just, they have to limit that, right? They have to try to put Scarsdale behind the line.
Yeah, I agree. And now we look at Scarsdale, and they won 28-0 versus Ossining. And last time they had 7 wins in a season, Mars, was back in 2016. So another team that has accomplished something pretty tremendous here for that program. And offensively, we talked about their option football. And it starts with their stud fullback in Gilligan, who has been tremendous. One of the best players in this section, best two-way players in this section. And then they mix it in with some of their explosive running backs in Krupkin, Brennan, Vibbert. And Vibbert, he plays at wide receiver. He can be a threat at the wide receiver spot, but having him at the halfback spot too. He had 2 rushing touchdowns last week. But another key factor for Scarsdale is he also had a kick return touchdown. And Mars, what really kind of sparked Scarsdale getting ahead of Mamaroneck was he had a kick return touchdown versus them last time. So if they're going to, if I'm Mamaroneck, there's no way I'm kicking to that man. But if they're going to kick to him, he can make you pay. He's a guy who's very explosive. He can make you miss in space. Just got to avoid those fumbles. But I like how they mix around those running backs, those pitch backs, and they use them for counters. They use them for sweeps. They use them for the pitch. And quarterback Ebner Boris, who had a rushing touchdown last week, I thought he had a much better game. When he had the last game of the season, I think versus Arlington, I thought he made some mistakes. I thought he wasn't as smooth, but last week I thought he was much smoother orchestrating this offense. So that's definitely a good sign for them. And the play action game, they made some plays last week off of play action against a pretty tough Ossining defense. So they're going to test the discipline of this Mamaroneck offense. They'll bring out a tight end. They might motion, then do non-motion, which they did against Mamaroneck last time, running the option with no motion. So, they're going to test their discipline and see, hey, do they have each level of this defense covered? Each back covered, excuse me. And then work some of the play action off of it. I mean, like I mentioned, they ran for 250 yards in that matchup last time. Defensively, they had a shutout last week. I mean, this defense has been really good. They were, going into the playoffs, I think they were number 2 in points allowed behind Ossining. But this front seven of Scarlet, they have performed very well. And it starts with that defensive line, which is, again, not overly big, but they are scrappy. They're pretty big. They've got pretty good size at the defensive end spots. Defensive tackle, they're a little light, but they can move. And it's the linebackers and guys like Gilligan and Brennan who can really get after you. And because you're kind of stuck behind the chains versus Scarsdale, which I've seen teams move the ball, but once it hits the 50-yard line for some reason, the Scarsdale defense ramps it up, and it's hard to finish drives. And this secondary has forced a bunch of turnovers between Vibbert, Krupkin back there. And now they're probably going to be looking to get some safety help over on Davidson and force some of these other wide receivers, or maybe Bone, and force some of these other wide receivers to beat their other man coverage. Because, if they can prevent Mamaroneck from hitting some big plays, see if they can run the ball on you, right? Force them to be able to run efficiently on you for the full game, because Scarsdale's been tough to do that against. So that's going to be kind of the big key takeaway from me if I was thinking, hey, how are they going to defend Mamaroneck? Just don't let Davidson beat you deep. Force Jacobson to, run the ball in between the tackles. Force Kobe to run the ball. Cooper, run the ball between the tackles, and see if they could do that consistently for 4 quarters. Because, that's going to be the big test. Thoughts on Scarsdale, Mars, and then we will go to a little bit of film.
Yeah, I feel like Scarsdale has been very impressive all year long, and we mentioned this a lot of times with them, is that they're doing that old school, option football, and they've just been dominating, and they've been owning the time of possession, and they just have to keep doing their own thing. Like, I feel like they have a lot of weapons that can really get the ball and make some plays. Defensively has really been the most impressive because they played some really good offenses throughout the year, and they obviously have been shutting people down.
They have.
And the question is going to be about how do they really keep Jacobson in check, right? And I feel like that's going to be one of the biggest challenges or things I'm looking for in this game, because I just feel like when he's playing and he's in the groove, it's really tough to stop him. So I'm wondering how Scarsdale is going to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're going to do a little film this time around, and the big thing that I'm going to focus in on is the Mamaroneck offense and the Scarsdale offense. And I'm going to show a little bit of what Mamaroneck did last week and look at what Scarsdale did versus Mamaroneck the first time that they played. So let me pull that up real quick. Make sure you guys can see. There we go. All right. So first I want to start with the road team. And, Mamaroneck, definitely happy to see their starting quarterback back. It was tough because they had like an underclassman running back, an underclassman quarterback, a lot of youth there. So it put a lot of pressure on this offensive line to try to open up holes, because that they were going to try to run the ball more. And last week I thought they were very strong. If you see here, they got two receivers to the right. They have this H-back who can, if you want to count him because he's outside the tackle, as a third receiver, trips to the right, single receiver to the left. And so you can see defensively, they got 7 in the box, right? So they got 7 in the box. Offense has 8. So it's, again, not a light box. So they got to run against some of these tight boxes when they have 2 backs. And the offensive line really executed last week. And so when you see, as this play goes along, what Mamaroneck did here, they're going to run kind of a pattern and play in their offense, which is they're going to have the H-back go to the right? Kind of, it's pretty much like a fluke but he's going to go to the right. You're going to have two linemen pull left. And I really like what the back does, where he attacks straight and then he's going to bend. And it's so important. It's a little details in this kind of stuff because they're trying to mess with the linebackers. If he just goes towards where the linemen are headed, it's an easier read for the linebackers. But if you attack straight ahead, you're really forcing the linebackers to not only shadow the back, but also read the linemen that are in front of them. Right? So as you can see, he attacks forward. And because of that, the linebackers are stepping in the wrong direction. You can see that outside linebacker who is in the box, he steps to his left. The middle linebacker steps to his left. And that's exactly what the offense wanted because it's allowing these linemen to pull and allowing these other offensive linemen that are down blocking to create kind of a wall that will shield these linebackers away. So you can see the offensive lineman does a good job getting off the line, creating some movement at the point of attack. Boom, look at this right here. You got a body on a body. And it's almost like it's exactly how coach draws this up on that offensive line on the whiteboard. You get a body on a body, and again, you're getting people turned. You're getting blocks at the second level. And the running back did a good job being patient, finding the hole, and hitting the hole hard. And you saw that quite a bit. Why they rushed over 200 yards. The offensive line executed, and the running backs found the hole and hit it hard. That's obviously going to be so important against a Scarsdale defense that is tough. They are tough. They move very well. They have veteran linebackers, so this offensive line has to be very aware of that. But another big thing, right? Similar, now again, not trips. Now they have the H-back to the left. They have now, if you want to count him because he's outside the tackle, 2 receivers to the left, 2 receivers to the right. And you can see the defense are coming out with 7 in the box again. Now, obviously, it's great to have Jacobson back because, well, you can put 7 in the box, but now your defense is going to have to do something here. Are they playing man? Are they playing a cover 2? That's why those guys on the right are highlighted. I want you to focus in on them. You got a bit of a high-low look between the safety and corner. So are they playing man or are they playing cover 2? But what you know is you got 2-on-2 here. And so this offense is going to roll him out to the right, Jacobson, and you're going to see the route combination, a quick out and then a fade by Davidson on the outside. So Jacobson's going to roll to his right. It's going to be so important on these rollouts, again, the little details, blocking the edge defender. So a lot of emphasis on the right tackle. So as this play gets going, look at the right tackle swing his hips out there. Does a really good job. And as the linebacker comes up, the running back's blocking him. So really good job on the edge blocking. And now look at the routes right here. He runs a quick out. The corner's got his back turned, right? So he has this quick out open. But he sees that Davis had a really good release on the outside. So now he's going to say, hey, I'm going to attack the outside. This is what this offense has been missing for a few weeks. Reading this and then hitting this. And look at this throw right here. Boom. I mean, that is a perfect throw. Great catch. I mean, look at these guys right here. They couldn't believe it. What a beautiful throw, beautiful catch. Unbelievable play. And these are the type of plays that, again, you're going to play against Scarsdale. They're going to put 7 in the box. You're going to have to win these one-on-one matchups. Whether they're giving you cover 2 or they're giving you man, you got to win at the line of scrimmage, make these plays, and now your quarterback is back, who you have seen be able to throw these kind of routes. But now let's go to Scarsdale. And they did a really good job against Mamaroneck, running their option, running their base offense. And they have a tight end to the right. You can see highlighted right here. Tight end wing and then a slot backside with the flanker. And you can see Mamaroneck came out with 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. And the defense really slanting towards the tight end because you can see these 3 defenders here over on the tight end side, the tight end wing side. So they're really trying to take away the runs to the tight end. So Scarsdale attacked weak. And again, the option starts with the fullback. Gilligan does a really good job. He draws so much attention for obvious reasons because he's been an absolute beast. So a lot of teams are focused in on that. But what's so important is when you're attacking weak and you're kind of showing your strength to the tight end, you got to play man coverage backside. And that's what this guy is. He's man on this on this slot back. And so the slot back is going inside. And so he's got to follow him. He's reading him. Right? So they're running the option that way. It starts with the fullback. You could see this guy stepping inside with the H-back. And now it leaves no edge defender. So the quarterback does a good job. He pulls it. Look at this flanker. He's going to be stalk blocking out there. And because the guy was man on that slot back and the slot back drew him in, quarterback pulls it, takes it to the outside. Leaves this wide open gap and a huge chunk play. Right? Scarsdale did a really good job of reading the option, executing, and putting Mamaroneck in a bind. If you're going to play man that way and not have a force guy because he has to follow that H-back, they'll attack the edge. Now another play. Again, here we go again. You got a tight end to the right, a wing, slot to the left. And you're going to see this guy creep in, and we got 5 guys on the line of scrimmage again. So again, they're trying to stop the run. They put 5 guys on the line with this Sam linebacker, this defensive end. You want to, an added defensive end over the tight end. And so what Scarsdale does is they're going to fake weak and counter to the tight end, right? Because they were attacking weak. Now let's get a counter because they might be anticipating it running to the weak side. And you're going to see when he reverse pivots and Gilligan goes left, look at the linebackers. They're bailing left right away. They don't even see those 2 linemen pulling until it's too late. So it's a fake to Gilligan here. Look at the lineman pulling, counter back. And I love this. Again, this offensive line is not overly big. But look at the movement that they get with the tight end down blocking with the tackle, with the guard down blocking. I love them driving their feet. And again, it creates that wall here that the linebacker got stuck in. You get a nice kick out block. Look at that lane right there. Boom. Hits it. And this is the game. This is the touchdown that put it away for Scarsdale the last time they played Mamaroneck. All right, Mars. I talked a lot right there. Who do you got winning this rivalry and why?
Yeah, I mean, obviously rivalry games are always going to be that you don't know who's going to win because it could be a elevated game from both sides. And the fact that Jacobson's back does help the odds for Mamaroneck because the offense can move. The defense, obviously, it gets more energized because instead of them being on the field more often, they actually will have an offense that can move down the field. And, they lost last time. And it's really tough to beat a team twice, right? Because now you've seen all the tricks you could throw at them, right? Scarsdale, on the other hand, is on a roll, right? And they have been doing well all year long. There was that very controversial ending of the game against North Rockland.
Yep.
Did they get in the end zone? Did they not get in the end zone?
Yep.
And they lost that number 1 seed that they were coasting. It felt like for a lot of those games. So after that moment, they got angry, right? And so I'm gonna go with Scarsdale mainly because they're playing at home. I feel like this type of game is gonna work for them because they're gonna own the time possession. Their defense is gonna be really tough. And Jacobson just got back from injury, right? And I'm not saying that he may not be 100% healthy either. We don't know that. We don't get the health reports.
No, you don't get those injury reports.
We don't get that intel, that injury report or anything. And I just know that when you're away from playing for several games, you're going to have some mishaps. And I think Scarsdale might cause some turnovers, get their offensive ball again. And I think that it's going to be a close game. I just think Scarsdale is going to have enough opportunities. They're going to own the time possession, and they're playing at home. I'm going to go with Scarsdale.
It's hard to disagree because I love the way Scarsdale defense has played. And what Scarsdale done offensively is they have been very efficient when they get the ball. They hold the ball, like you said, for time possession. They are time possession kings this year because they continually can get those 3.5 yards, 4 yards. They continuously move the chain. So when Mamaroneck gets the ball, they have to be super efficient because you don't know when you're going to get it again. So that's going to be so important. With that said, I am going to go with the upset. I am going to go with Mamaroneck. Jacobson, as you mentioned, being gone for a few weeks, but he came back last week. Now, if he was coming back this week, I'd agree with you that the rust might be a little bit excessive. But he was back, he was efficient, and he really does change the offense. And I felt like Mamaroneck's defense, that has been pretty good, because of the their inability to move the ball offensively, I thought it was wearing on this defense. But that has changed. And now you're playing the option a second time. So you've seen it once, now you see it twice, and I just have this weird feeling. Scarsdale is the favorite for a reason. Love the way they play defensively. But I have a feeling Mamaroneck pulls off the upset here, goes on the road, and wins this game. All right, Mars. That was AA, everybody. Now we are going to go to A, and a shout out again to G Harris 2K on IG. Made this really nice image for A. He had one for AA, but it came in a little blurry, so I apologize to him that I didn't use it. But I'm going to use this one and give him a shout out because I thought it was a cool little thing that he built. Obviously, guys, if you have any questions, make sure you put it in the chat. Hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button. We are going to talk about A now. And let me see, which is the first one? I think the thing's already up yet. Yep. Let's go number 2 Yorktown at 6-3, and the number 1 seed Rye, who is 9-0. And, you know, these two teams, they played a couple weeks back, right? Week 6, where Rye won 35-21. But that was a close game for 3 quarters. It was 21-21 at the end of 3, and then Rye pulled away. So super entertaining game for those who watched it last time. Really nice matchup for a semifinals game. But let's start with Yorktown, the road team. And, you know, they won in dominant fashion last week. They won 40-7 versus Eastchester. They really came out firing on all cylinders and put that game away pretty quickly. And, you know, offensively, they were great. I mean, they were super efficient, especially passing the ball. They just got on Eastchester's secondary, and it was led the way by their quarterback in Gonzalez, who he was 14 of 16, Mars, for 230 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also ran for 55 yards and a touchdown. And that's a key factor there. The 55 yards rushing and the touchdown, to me, is another key factor that I'll talk about in a minute. But that is crazy efficiency. You have 2 incompletions and you score 5 touchdowns, and then 6 total by running the ball is wild. And you can't have, I'm just going to say this about Caden Gonzalez, because, you know, when we talk about quarterbacks throughout Section 1, you can't have a conversation about best quarterbacks without him being in there. I think he's been so good this year that it's like, you know, old news, which I don't think people realize. But this is a young man who has broken the school record for yards and touchdowns in a season this year. So he's so important for that offense who likes to throw the ball a lot. And he's got a cast of wide receivers that have made big plays for them. Even though they lost so many receivers last year from graduation, these guys have stepped up and been big for them. Moretz, he had 3 touchdowns last week. McEnroe had over 100 yards and a touchdown. And we know about Tyler Galante, who, you know, he didn't have that super explosive over 100 total yards performance, but he requires so much attention. It opens things up for others. And he had a touchdown last week. And he also had 3 touchdowns versus Rye in their last matchup. So he's going to be such an important factor here. He's going to draw a lot of attention, which is going to leave some one-on-one opportunities for some of these other stud receivers that they have. Question that I have is, can they run the ball against Rye? Because last time they threw the ball a lot, it was, I think, what was it? It was definitely, I think it was over 25 times, and they weren't super efficient because Rye did a really good job of mixing things up on them. They'll rush 4, they'll rush 5, they'll rush 3 and drop 8. They were really doing giving Caden a lot of different looks. But there was also a lot of times where Rye played some man coverage. And so it's going to be really important that this offensive line handles the Rye pressures, which Caden faced a lot of pressure versus Rye when they were mixing up these different things. And even when they rushed 3, if they took away Caden's first read, this defensive line was getting home. So this offensive line really is going to have to step up and play a little bit better than they did last time. Because, you know, like the coaches over at Yorktown, they do a really good job of, if you're going to play man on them or you're going to try to give them zone, they're going to flood the zone. They're going to try to give you these man beaters, these crossers over the middle to get some of these speedy receivers some space. So if this offensive line can hold up, there's going to be chances for them to hit some plays down the field. But the second thing that they have to do offensively, Caden Gonzalez, he ran the ball last week for 55 yards and a touchdown. He's got to use his legs. If it's not there, use your legs. He's a good athlete. Get down. Don't take those extra hits, but use your legs, and that can help opportunities for them to move the chains when things get tight and Rye plays some good coverage. Use your legs to get those extra yards. I think that's going to be such a key factor for Caden here, and also help if they can run the ball with, you know, some of their backs, like Carciotti. Defensively, they were great last week. You know, they forced an INT. Moritz had that INT, and they had plays made by Laurie, Bowen, Schluter. But the last time they played Rye, Mars, 2 big things happened for them. Obviously, they gave a big touchdown pass right out of the gate, which, again, it's hard to stop Rye consistently. But the big things that stood out to me is they struggled to keep quarterback Miller in the pocket. And that's going to be big. If they're trying to take away his first read, they have to keep him in the pocket. You can't allow him to scramble. He is deadly with his legs, so they struggled with that last time. And in the second half, they struggled stopping the run. They gave up over 200 yards total last time they played Rye. So this defense, you're going to see Rye with condensed formations, with the Wildcat offense where Giuliano is taking direct snaps. They have to be a lot better, a lot tougher at the point of attack against the run. Thoughts on Yorktown, Mars?
I mean, Yorktown has been impressive all year long, and I always felt like they were, guaranteed to me the third best team in A, mainly because Somers and Rye have just been so dominant all year long, and I feel like they've obviously Gonzalez has been considered to me one of the best quarterbacks in the section, right? Granted, in A it feels like it's flooded with really good quarterbacks, but I feel like Gonzalez has been very impressive, and this Yorktown defense has been very impressive. I don't think necessarily they're the biggest team out there, but they've been gritty, right? They've been very tough against a lot of bigger opponents, and I feel like they force turnovers when they need to. And I said this before, Yorktown, whenever they get a tough matchup, they always step up to the occasion, right? Sometimes they'll blow a game against like Fox Lane, but then they have these really tough matchups against Rye, and they'll have a showcase, a battle between them, and I feel like that's been their mantra all year. So now they get to play Rye again.
Yeah, this is definitely a quarterback duel. I disagree on like loaded quarterbacks in A. I think the top three teams have stud quarterbacks, right? There's not a lot of depth, I think, at quarterback spot because there's a mix of veterans and young players. But in this matchup is a quarterback duel. And let's talk about that other quarterback and the other team, and that's Rye, who they won 34-14 versus Brewster last week. And offensively, they also were very efficient. Quarterback Miller, he was 12-17, 171 yards and a touchdown. So again, you see this under 20 throws, right? That's another important thing to keep in mind, right? Under 20 throws, he was super efficient, didn't really turn the ball over. Jake Kesner had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. We know about some of these other weapons who made big plays for them the last time they played Yorktown, which was Schumacher and Fenton. Those guys are, they're tough because, again, you put Schumacher on the outside, Fenton on the inside, and Kesner at tight end. It's where do you want to move your defense, right? Where do you want to move that safety help? That's going to be the key thing, and Rye is going to be looking for that. If you're going to give safety help over the middle on Kesner or in the slot in Fenton, they're going to attack Schumacher. He's 6'5", and they did that last time. First play from scrimmage for them was a long touchdown pass, right? Because they were one-on-one, and he beat them off the line of scrimmage, and they scored on a deep ball. So are you going to help on the outside? Then Kesner and Fenton, they're going to be open there. Hess is another one who can make plays being one-on-one. So Rye has a cast of wide receivers, and we've seen them time and time again out of the gate. They want to throw the ball, right? They want to hit these explosive plays. And then when the game starts to slow down, which is what happened in Yorktown in the second half, what did Rye do? They ran the football. They ran the football with power. They used both their backs. Giuliano was back. He didn't play last time that they played Yorktown. He was great against Harrison. He was good last week. What did he have? I think he had a couple touchdowns, right? But they ran over 200 yards the last time they played Yorktown, and that was without Giuliano. So you're going to get a bunch of Giuliano. You're going to get Ramachandran in that matchup. You're going to see these condensed formations. They'll run play action, but they'll also run right at you and get these guys in kind of the wildcat and see if you can win at the point of attack against them. And that, to me, if Rye can come out and play balance and run the football, it opens up this pass game. It makes Miller be extremely efficient off of play action, and that's where this Rye offense can't be stopped, is when they are balanced. When they are balanced, they cannot be stopped. Defensively, listen, I know they gave up some plays, especially towards the end of the game, but they forced 4 turnovers last week. Lewis had 2 INTs. Fenton had an INT. Brady had a big sack. They did a nice mix last time, like I mentioned before, rushing 3, rushing 4, rushing 5. They like to put a defender in front of Galante, when he was in the slot, right? Just to disrupt their timing. And so I'm anticipating to see that, try to jam Galante, who's super fast, but not a very big guy. Mix it up. Give Gonzalez different looks. Try to get some pressure on him, take away that first read. Right? Those are the things I'm expecting to see again. But again, you got to get creative. I think, from pre-snap to post-snap, Rye has to get creative because now Caden and this offensive coordinators over at Yorktown have seen how Rye has played them. So this is the second time around. right? So they're definitely going to be a little bit more comfortable. Got to get, creative on some of their pre and post snap stunting and coverage sets. Thoughts on Ryan Marson and would pick it?
I mean, Rye's offense has been obviously unmatched by a lot of teams, maybe other than Somers.
Yep.
And I've been talking up Miller all year, saying he's been putting up mad numbers, and he's only continued doing so. But like you said, Rye's offense has just all these weapons. They sometimes can feel unstoppable with all these different guys you got to account for, and their defense has been very aggressive, and they force a lot of turnovers. They really make it difficult for any offense to try to get into a groove, and that's really just how they've been winning all these games. So obviously, it's going to be a interesting matchup.
Mars, what do you got?
All right. Well, this was a tough one. And I honestly was debating between both these teams quite a bit, mainly because and I said this earlier in the show, but whenever you play a team twice, it's a lot harder to win, right? And because you already know what they're going to throw, you already know their schemes, and you know what their plan was previously, and so now you know how to prepare. And the game was extremely close through 3 quarters. And then Rye kind of just opened it up, right? And they just started to score a lot. And at the end of the day, and I know this sounds crazy, but this is a crossover game that meant nothing. And we've been adamantly talking a lot of trash against that concept. And a part of me says, maybe, just maybe, the players and the coaches also kind of felt like, yes, we're going to battle to the end for nothing. And it kind of deflates that, I guess you say that predator instinct of
but now they've seen each other.
But now now they've seen each other, but now it's different, right?
Yeah.
Now it's you win, you go forward, or you lose, you go home. And I was really close of picking Yorktown in this game, but there's a secret weapon that Rye has that's coming back, and that's Liliano, who has been dominant, right? Whether you're playing in B or you're playing in A, it doesn't matter, because he is that secret weapon that Rye has, and I think with all these weapons that Rye has, it's going to be a really close game, but I think Rye is going to win. And I think Rye is going to go to the section title for 2 straight years, just different classes. But I'm going to go with Rye.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I am going to go with Rye. I like the grit that Yorktown plays with. And like you say, they rise to the occasion. They rose to the occasion, had a chance to beat Somers. They rose to the occasion against Rye, kept it close. They beat Harrison. Right? So they've played the 3 out of the final 4 teams in A. And they have been extremely competitive in all 3 games. But I do think that Rye is going to run the football. They're going to be much more balanced, and I think they wear down the Yorktown defense, which is going to do 2 things. Number one, it's going to allow them to hold the time possession and keep Yorktown's offense on the side. And so I don't think that Yorktown's going to get I don't think it's going to be as close as it was last time for as long. But I do think it's going to be close for a while, and then Rye is going to pull away, similar to what we saw last time, but might not be all the way into the 4th quarter. I think Rye wins, and it's by running the football, being more balanced, and kind of controlling the time of possession. I'm going to go with Rye. All right, Mars, let's go to the other one. Guys, again, make sure you go into these flash polls and vote. Also, if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. We'll answer them, and hit that thumbs up and that sub button if you haven't already. Let's go to the next one, Mars, and that is the number 2 seed Harrison, who's 6-3 at number 1 seed Somers, who is 9-0. These guys played each other back in week 5, where Somers dominated. They won 40-3. But how about this? This is the 3rd year in a row that they have met in the playoffs. This is obviously a rematch of last year's Section 8 title game. And Somers is 2-0 in the previous 2 matchups. So let's talk about the road team, Harrison. And what I'll say is this. They won 14-7 versus Mahopac. They kind of own Mahopac, at least going into the playoffs, right? I mean, they're 3-0 versus Mahopac in 3 straight years, and now they're facing the team that they can't beat in the playoffs, which is Somers. So a real change of emotions here. But offensively, it was really good to see Joe Krupe back, right? He was back. He was in uniform now. He wasn't fully implemented into the offense, being away for 7 weeks with a broken foot. You could tell he looked a bit rusty. So they had him out at wide receiver, right? Just his presence does change things. I'm expecting to see him more involved, obviously, this week. But even that, they rushed for 260 yards last week, Mars. I mean, the running backs ran with physicality, which I called them out last week, this offense. I said that everyone needed to step up, And they did. They ran for 260 yards. They ran with physicality. They were blocked with physicality up front. And I really like how right out of the gate, they mixed up with the quarterbacks, right? You saw reps with Badner. You saw reps with Dante Lanza at the quarterback spot. That's got to be a staple, right? You know that they're going to have to move Lanza around. You got the wide receiver, running the ball, quarterback. They're hoping to get, obviously, Joe Krupe more involved. But I was really happy to see some of these other backs step up. I mean, Nicolaj had 88 yards rushing and a touchdown. Marisi had 100 yards and a touchdown. So against Somers, it's going to be hard to run the ball consistently. So you need to throw a lot of different things at them. Running out of the spread, running the option, running any counter action you have, or twist option. You got to throw in some wrinkles because to consistently run against Somers on how they're playing defensively lately is very difficult. But to that extent, Somers is also going to give you press man. They're going to give you press man. And if you have Krupe out at wide receiver and you have Lanza out at wide receiver, you need to make them pay. You need to make them pay if you have some stud backs who can beat man coverage and they're giving you that man coverage and you have those guys out there, you do have to make them pay. We said it last time. They could not do it. They could not hit on any pass plays down the field. That has to change this time around. So whoever's at the quarterback spot, whether it's Lanza or Badner, you're going to get that. You obviously run the ball. That's your number one priority to control the clock. It's important to keep Somers' offense on the side, but you're going to have to hit on some chunk plays in the passing game if you're going to try to pull off this upset. Defensively, they had an INT last week. They did a really, Mapec loves to run the ball. They're one of the bigger teams, more physical running teams, and they really, were trying to run away from Belidamaj, and that's what they did. And so Harrison, they were a bend but don't break, and this defense did a good job of, again, they took damage at times running the ball, but when it was defending the pass, they did a good job of tackling. They did a good job of swarming, and they could just generate one negative play here, and that's what was enough for them. But this time around, playing against the Somers offense, you can't take away everything, right? You can't take away everything. They came out against Somers the last time they played. They were, in my opinion, bad. They gave up 21 points in the first 13 minutes, and that was big plays running the ball and passing the ball. And so I'm expecting this Harrison defense has a lot of pride. They're physical. They have to be better. And so, to me, what do you take away here? You can't take away everything, right? You have Palazzolo at the wide receiver spot. To me, is a must. You cannot allow him to hit these 50-yard touchdown passes, whether they're bubble screens or go routes or slants. I think you have to give them light box. I think you got to mix it up between giving them heavy boxes and light boxes. And this defensive front seven is going to have to win at times being in a light box against Kelly, against these offensive line. That's, to me, they have to force Somers to try to march down the field methodically because you can't give up the big plays. If they get up on you 14-0, that is so devastating for your offense because your offense wants to run the ball and not throw it 20-plus times. So it's going to be so important to prevent the big play. Thoughts on Harrison, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like Harrison dominated Maybach when it came to just making them unable to really move the ball, right? And I feel like defensively they really controlled that game. Offensively, that obviously they were bouncing back, and Krupe is obviously rusty, and he's coming back from a long injury. But I felt like they just owned that game when it came to the time possession, and obviously they're going to be looking to try to do a similar thing here because they're not going to be the biggest team out there, but and they're going to be gritty and they're going to fight, right? And I feel like that's something that Harrison's team really does pride itself on, especially their defense. They do, and I think you mentioned it already, but they're a bend but don't break type of defense. They're going to give up plays, but it's going to be, can they prevent Somers from really having these big plays and just scoring on will, right? And that's going to be the big thing for Harrison. I feel like they have to really limit that.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, they did that. Again, they played another high-powered offense a few weeks back in Rye, and that's what they did a good job of, preventing those big plays and forcing Rye to try to be methodical and try to generate a negative play, get them behind the chains, and that's got to be the similar attitude against Somers. Moving to Somers now. They won 34-0 versus Clarkstown South. Offensively, listen, you're going to get a mix of spread. You're going to get a mix of these condensed formations, and they have shown that they can beat you multiple ways, running the ball and throwing the ball, and they really like to attack your numbers. And what I mean by that is if you're going to give us a light box, we can run the ball. We have big offensive linemen who can move people. We have a great back in Kelly. We have a quarterback who can run. So we'll run the ball. You give us light numbers. And if you're trying to load the box and you're going to play man coverage on Palazzolo, that's bad news, man. I haven't seen a team play man coverage on Palazzolo successfully for any period of time. So they're going to attack again, if you're not going to bracket Palazzolo, we're going to throw it to him. And if you're going to give us light boxes, we'll run the ball. But what has been impressive to me is other guys have stepped up. So you had the three Musketeers. You know about Iglesias last week. He was 19 of 22 passing. I mean, another super efficient 3 touchdown performance. Kelly had 2. Palazzolo had 2. The three Musketeers we know about. They've been dominant. But the other guys have really stepped up. And Tristan Iglesias, Violante, Whipple, Kelly, they have made some plays too, which puts so much pressure down on your defense. If they're winning their one-on-ones, you got no chance. And this offensive line has been an absolute force. They have been starting off so fast, putting teams that have to throw the ball more than they want to. And that's kind of been the way that they have really hurt teams. Defensively, again, shutout last week, really thrive on stopping the run. And if they could get Harrison, they can get up on Harrison offensively, slow down the run game. That puts Harrison in a really, really tough bind. Now, again, how much does Krupe come back? If you see Krupe out there with Lands at the wide receiver spot, I'm not playing press man there, right? I'm trying to bracket that side and saying, hey, let's see if those other running backs can run on us again, right? That's going to be the big thing for me. And you see Lands in the backfield with Krupe, odds are the run is pretty high, right? So looking at the personnel, where they line up, those are going to be some big things. Thoughts on Somers, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like their offense is obviously the highest in points forced, and it really is riding behind this offensive line. And granted, there's so many weapons that you have to really account for, but the offensive line has been bullying people up front, right? And I said this earlier in the season, and Somers' biggest problem or concern I had was that they always started out super slow, but then it felt like they kind of listened to me and said, all right, after the
yeah, that's what they listened. They were listening to Mars, and that's what changed.
They listened to us, and they said, you know what, Mars, I think you're right. And they said, we're going to wake up from now on. And ever since the Mapac game, where I told them that was exactly what's going to happen, they said, not anymore, Mars. And they just started just blowing down the doors every single game by halftime. And I just feel like, they just been dominating. So I feel like it really just is going to depend on this front seven, on this offensive line that's really going to have to own the line of scrimmage. And if they do, this game will be over by halftime.
Yeah. For film-wise, before we pick the game, I want to look at both these offenses and show you what Harrison did last week, followed up by, how Somers really attacks you numbers-wise and kind of where you place your defenders. So let me bring up that on the film. Here we go. You guys can see it?
Yep.
All right. So first, let's start with the road team. And that's Harrison. So Harrison gave you a mix. They gave you some of the spread looks. They gave you some of the option looks. And we'll start with the first thing. And again, they have to try to show that they can run out of both. And because, again, they come out in the spread here, and I want you to highlight a couple things. Okay. First thing is the two guys on the bottom. That's Dante Lands out there. That's Joe Krupe. You got those guys out there. You're, as a defense, you're like, oh boy, the passing the ball is a bit dangerous. You got a bunch of weapons out there. So they got 3 defenders out there. And on the other side, they're going to be playing press on this single receiver and a high safety. So with all those, kind of placements of your defenders, you got 6 guys in the box, which is a light box if you include your quarterback who can run. So you got 6 versus 7. And so if your offensive line can win at the point of attack, you can run against these boxes. And what it was so important is that this offensive line blocks with physicality and running backs run with physicality, which at times Harrison has struggled to do, but not on this play. So we're going to watch it right here. You're going to see you're going to get some down blocks. You're going to get these linemen pulling. And then the quarterback has the option, if the DN crashes, that he could pull the ball. So as this play gets going, a nice ride. You see the defensive end doesn't crash. So he's going to hand it off here. But look at the point of attack. Look at the wall. Look at the movement generated by these down blocks. You're getting Harrison linemen moving defenders. And then you got to get this very important kick out block. Head on to the inside. You can see right there. Boom. And that's what opens up this lane. Really good job of moving people at the point of attack, getting a body on a body, and watch again, hitting the hole hard. It leads to that touchdown right there. You got the numbers. Can you execute? Can you run hard? Can you execute your blocks? That's what they did out of the spread. But then what Harrison did is they showed you another look, the option look. Right? And you're going to get Dante Lands at the quarterback spot. So again, mixing things up, not just coming out spread all the time. We'll give you the option. And that's what they're going to do. And they're going to highlight 2 defenders because he can give it to the fullback, he can pull it, or he can pitch it. And you're going to highlight the first level defender, which is that D tackle highlighted, second level defender, which is this strong safety or outside linebacker. Right? So as the play gets going, there he is right there. There's the 2 reads. And again, winning at the point of attack from your lineman, so important. Blocking with physicality, executing. So they fake it to the fullback as he crashes, but as his outside defender, again, you're seeing the movement here. Outside defender gets on the outside shoulder of the quarterback. So in his mind, he says, I could beat this guy because he kind of over-pursued here. So Dante does a good job of faking to the fullback. He sees the leverage there, and look at him explode and hit that hole hard. Leads to a big run play. This is going to be so important because Harrison's not going to throw it 20-plus time team. They got to win running the ball out of the spread and out of these option looks. But let's go to the other team, ours, and that's Somers, whose offense has been unbelievable. So I'm pulling up against the same team, Mayapack, and you can see they know how to attack your numbers, running the ball and throwing it. So what I want to highlight here is this single receiver down here is Palazzolo. They have 3 receivers to the right, one of them being that kind of H-back on the outside of the tackle. So you see Palazzolo, you see 3 receivers, and the defense goes to a 2-eye safety look because they're really trying to bracket Palazzolo with a guy in his face and a safety over the top. And because of that, you got about 6 guys in the box, 7 if you want to count that overhang, but 6 guys really in the box. So we're going to run against that. We have a good old line. We have a good running back. Let's run against that. And so that's exactly what they do. And again, watching the lineman getting on a body, getting some movement. Look at the kick out block by that H-back. And watch Kelly, who's a very good back, I think one of the more underrated guys and not a lot of people talk about, finding a hole, hitting the hole, getting to that second level. Look at him do the ladder, and you see the speed. But they see you give a light box, okay, we'll run against it. Leads to a long touchdown when everyone executes their blocks. Now we go to another play, and this is against Harrison. And it showed, again, Harrison gave up some big plays in the passing game against Somers. It's because look at this right here. Now they're loading up the box. They got 7 in the box, 3 defenders here to the outside to their 3 receivers. Right? It seems like a pretty good matchup, but you got a high safety here. He's 10 yards off the ball, split between the tackle and the number 3 receiver. And so they're going to run a bubble screen here. Right? Those 2 receivers can block those 2 defenders. Look what this creates right here. Quick play action, throw it to him. That's called space. And if you got Palazzolo in this kind of space, 6 yards with no defender in sight, that's bad news for you. Look at the good stalk blocking here, and you get Palazzolo in space like this, usually leads to disaster. So again, Somers, they're going to see how you line up on us, how you line up at certain formations. They're going to say, okay, load the box, we'll throw it outside. Give us light boxes, we'll run against you. It's really, really hard to defend. Marshall, you got winning and why?
Yeah, I feel like obviously this, it feels like a common occurrence. I feel like we're always saying that in the semis or the sectionals, we're seeing Harrison, Somers face off against one another. And I think I jokingly said this in the beginning of the year, but it feels like Mayapac's kryptonite's Harrison, and then Somers is Harrison's kryptonite, because it feels like it's been a reoccurring same events happening over and over again. And, you know, Harrison obviously has been playing tough against a lot of opponents this year. And obviously against Somers that we didn't really get to see that same experience. As much as playing a team twice is always difficult to do, I just don't think that Harrison has enough to really slow down the Somers team.
Yeah.
I think this, if we were looking at like last year's game, it was a close game for a good amount of the time. But this is not the same Somers team, in my opinion. I feel like this team has been clicking on all cylinders. They've been dominating their opponents every single week. And I feel like Harrison just doesn't have enough to slow them down.
Yeah.
I think their defense is good, but the problem is that your offense struggles. And against a really good Somers defense, if your offense can't be consistent, then you're not going to get a lot of opportunities, and Somers is going to score at will at times. So I just feel like Harrison's defense is good. I just don't know how much you can slow down Somers to a certain degree. Unless Harrison starts pulling off special teams touchdowns and going crazy like they did in the section championship, that could change things up. But I really don't see it really happening this time. I'm going to go with Somers.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how Joe Krupe get a little more involved in the offense because he's so important offensively. His presence creates issues for your defense because again you have to account for him. But I agree with you because just I haven't seen consistency enough in the passing game, and Somers has been really good stopping the run defensively. And so if you're not winning the point of attack, can't run consistently on them, you're gonna have to throw the ball a little bit more, hit on some of these big plays at least to keep the defense honest. Just haven't seen enough of that consistency from Harrison on that side. And defensively, you can only stop Somers for so long. You have to try to take away certain things, but the big thing for them is to keep things in front of them. I just don't think they have enough to keep up with Somers. I agree with you. I'm going to go with Somers to win. All right, that was everyone. Thank you guys as always. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and that sub button. Any questions, guys? Throw it in the chat. We'll answer them. And now we are going to move to B. And let's start with the first matchup. And here we have another rematch, Mars, and a big, big rivalry. And that is number 4 seed Pleasantville, who's 4-4, at the number 1 seed Westlake, who is 8-0. And these two big rivals played each other back in week 7, not that long ago, where Westlake won 21-0. And let's start with Pleasantville. They won 28-7 versus Byram Hills. And I got to be honest with you, I was a bit surprised. Not so much that they won, but how dominant the offensive line was running the football against Byram Hills last week. And I thought they had to get creative a little bit running the ball. I thought they would have to mix things up with formation, try to create some light boxes, run against some light boxes. But you know what? They said, screw it. We're going to go heavy, and we're just going to run right at you. And this offensive line really won up front. They really moved people. And if that's the kind of physicality they're going to play with, you know, things are going to get interesting here because they ran for over 200 yards last week, 213 yards. Offensive line was strong. We know Sadao is their leading rusher. He had over 30 carries, I think 186 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did have a fumble, so we've seen some fumbles by him that he has to shore up. We've seen Hudzinski had a rushing touchdown. So they were running the ball with physicality. And when they could do that, then their quarterback spot, you see, gets a little bit more efficient. Like Rizzi was 5 for 8, 48 yards and a touchdown. That's where they want to be. They want to be throwing the ball 10 to 12 times, right? Now, the issue that they have, and again, he's throwing it, you know, whether it's Rizzi, whether it's Chalice, whoever at the quarterback, throwing it to McPhee. You got Reish, you got Strauss. So there are some guys outside of, like, McPhee's big, but the other guys are not big guys, but they're quick guys. So you got some weapons out there that they can beat some man coverage. And what's going to be important is it's going to be a lot harder to run the ball against this Westlake defensive front 7. So they are going to have to keep them honest by attacking them down the field in condensed formation, to me, off of play action, because you know you're going to get man coverage out of these condensed formations. They need to attack it. And Westlake at times has given up some big pass plays. The problem is, last time they played Westlake, Mars, you know, Pleasantville had 37 total yards rushing. And they had to throw the ball 31 times. That is not how this offense is built. And if that's the kind of similar numbers you're going to see this time around, I don't love their chances winning the football game. So to me, if they have to stay balanced, they have to try to test running the ball. And again, are they going to come out heavy again? I don't know. And try to run right at Westlake, test the physicality of this offensive line? Or do they try to get a little bit creative, giving some light boxes to try to run against? I'm interested to see, because I thought they would run one thing. They did something differently. So interested to see there. But one thing I do know, they can't have 4 turnovers like they did last time. 4 turnovers, one of them led to a touchdown. So if this offense, to me, this is a grinded out game. You want to control the ball, keep it low scoring. You want to not turn the ball over, play as clean as you can, and really try to keep this a low scoring, close game and try to make a couple big pass plays to try to win this football game. Defensively, last week, 3 sacks, and they only gave up 1 big play that I counted. There was 1 major play that led to a long rushing touchdown, but outside of that, Pleasantville did a really good job of keeping things in front of them, and then in the second half, I thought they were pretty dominant. And you saw guys like Sadao, McPhee, Reish, Hagan, Sullivan, Feeney, multiple guys make plays on this defense, which that is good to see, because that's what they're going to have to do. With all these backs, you have to swarm to the football, you need to tackle well in space, and keep everything in front of you, right? Force Westlake to be methodical down the field. You can't give up these big plays with the speedy backs that they have. Thoughts on Pleasantville, Morris?
Yeah, I feel like last week was one of those complete games that that Pleasantville was really hoping for when it came to the amount of people that stepped up and really just did the simple things, right? And I feel like that is what Pleasantville's mantra should be, is to be the simple team. It doesn't need to be complicated. I feel like once you overcomplicate something, it causes a lot of kids to think, and then once you start thinking too much, you're not playing, right? And I feel like what we saw last week was simple, right? They said we're going to run in the staple block party overload offense that they've ran ever for the past 4 years, and we're just going to run right and we're going to run left. And it's simple means that you can play aggressive, and that's exactly what they did. And that really was that's all you had to do, right? And as much
can
as
they do it again?
Crazy,
that's a good question. There's a bigger, more physical front seven.
Yeah, I mean that. I just think that overall, I just think schematically, I think when you tell somebody you don't need to think, you just got to run in this direction. You need to block in this direction. It makes life a lot easier for kids to say, I'm just going to be aggressive as possible, not have to think of where I got to go.
Yeah.
And I just feel like keeping it simple helped this offense be consistent. And that's what they have to be. And defensively, they just played a complete game. I feel like they made some mistakes.
Yeah, only one big play. They gave up 4 big plays last time to play Byram. I think it was only 1 big play this past time.
Yeah, and I feel like it was almost like, and I said this before last week, and I said there was going to be a lot of animosity, and there was, right? There was a lot, almost like a redemption arc they had to do just to reclaim their field after the the fans stormed the field last time, and I felt like that was pretty evident in the way they played, right? And so I feel like they have to kind of now do the same kind of a thing against now Westlake, because it's the same 2 opponents in the last 2 weeks, so it's like almost like another redemption arc again.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Westlake, and they were dominant last week. They won 38-0 versus Nanuet. Offensively, they were a lot more cleaner in this game than they were against Pleasantville a couple weeks prior. Quarterback Lingeza had 2 passing touchdowns, both to Cole Barnett, who's been a nice, reliable weapon for them in the passing game. We know about DiNapoli, who's been a stud for them. He had a rushing touchdown off a long run. Haran Piazza also had rushing touchdowns. We've seen Hud be a big playmaker for them. So the story has been a pretty simple one. They have multiple backs. Obviously, to me, led by Lingeza and DiNapoli, but they have multiple backs who can hurt you. And this offensive line is physical. They can move. They got good feet. So we know what they like to do. And when they played Pleasantville last time, they had some pretty uncharacteristic turnovers that hurt drives, but they were winning off of traps. They were winning off of quarterback runs. Were pretty damn successful. So if we look for them to test Pleasantville again to make sure that they've shored that up. And another thing that definitely is a big thing is not to turn the ball over. That's obviously a huge thing. It killed some drives for them that were really opening things up. Defensively, they were dominant last week. And there's going to be 2 prompts here. If they can get ahead of Pleasantville and force them out of their game, which, like you just said, try to overload you, try to run you over. But if you get ahead of them by 1 touchdown, not 1 touchdown, but if you get up 14-0, now the offense has got to change a little bit, right? So that's going to be the big thing for Westlake. Can they start off fast, number 1, and number 2, slowing down the run game? Because that's what they made it really hard for Pleasantville last time to run the ball consistently. Then they got ahead, and now Pleasantville had to throw it 30-plus times, led to 3 INTs. So that's going to be the big thing, this defensive front 7 slowing down the run game. And then in the back end, you had Lingeza, Barnett, Zino. The secondary's got playmakers to them, and they like to be very aggressive. They can give up big plays because they like to, again, be very aggressive on receivers, which can open up some big plays down the field. But they're challenging you to say, hey, we can get some pressure on you. You can hit these big plays, and it usually leads to INTs. So that's kind of, I think, you're going to see a similar thing of what you saw last time with Westlake defensively. Thoughts on Westlake, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like they all around offensively they were kind of dominating up front, and I think it was I think they kind of ran Inuit out the building.
They did.
And even by halftime, it was getting gross. But I feel like offensively they've just been doing, and it kind of carries on from what I said in the last segment. simple things, right? And I don't necessarily think Westlake is being really overly complicated. And I feel like that's what helps them, is that they can be aggressive, right? It's simplified. It makes life easier for these backs and linemen. And now they're just playing aggressive up front, and they're not going to trick you. They're just going to do the simple things and just win up front. And defensively, they're always aggressive. And I agree with you. They basically went up pretty early, and then they said, well, you're going to have to pass a lot in order for you to really make all these plays and catch back up. And they capitalized on the mistakes. And I feel like that's what they're going to be banking on, right? Granted, I don't know. I can't see the future or anything, but all I could say is that it may be different. It may not be. Who knows when we get there.
And it's hard to say with these rivalry games, right? And so when I make my game pick, this is tough. Those who are my Patreon members, which again, I really appreciate didn't give a quick shout out to our Patreon members who are so important to us, and just want to give them a shout out. But if you are a Patreon paid member, I put out a way too early predictions in August on what's going to happen by the time season ends. And so this one's hard for me because I made some predictions about B, which this game could really determine if I'm right or wrong here. And I got to tell you, these are big rivalry games. There's a lot of animosity in this game as well. I do think Pleasantville is going to run a little bit better than they did last time. I think they're going to run the ball a little bit better. The question that I have is, can they be efficient passing the ball? And because of this, in a huge game with this Westlake defense very aggressive, I don't think they can. And I think Westlake is going to make more plays offensively than Pleasantville can, throwing the ball, and probably be a little bit more efficient running the ball. I think both these defenses play hard. They play fast. It'll be low scoring for a while. But I do think Westlake has been the better team for the majority of the season, and that is going to show in this game at the end. Westlake is going to win. All right, let's go to the other B matchup, Mars. And that is the number 6 seed Ardsley, who's 4-4, at the number 2 seed Bronxville, who is 8-0. And these teams did play each other last time in week 4, where Bronxville won 26-19. And this is an interesting one because that was the last time, Mars, that Bronxville had a team that scored more than 7 points on them. So it's been a long time since Bronxville has played a competitive game, and the last time they did play one was against Ardsley. And so when you look at these two teams, and let's start with Ardsley, they won 14-13 on the upset at Pearl River. Their running back Dulcine, he's the starting point for them. He had a rushing touchdown last week. Kaplan also had a rushing touchdown. Now, the last time they played Bronxville, it's so important for them to run the ball, but the last time they played Bronxville, they struggled to run. So they had to pass a lot more. And there were some things that I really liked that they did out of the passing game. They gave you condensed formations for some max protection off of play action, off of some quick passes. And then even in the spread, these receivers were winning some of the one-on-one battles. So they did some really good things passing the ball against Bronxville, gave them a chance to win. They hit some big plays, which I'll show later. But the bad part is they also gave up some big sacks, some big pressures, and had 3 turnovers. So that's kind of the Ardsley season, is you see a lot of flashes of some great moments. Now, they played a much cleaner game last week, and they win. But when they have these 3 turnovers, that leads to them losing. So that's kind of the big thing offensively. I'm expecting to see, again, can this offensive line hold up? Because Bronxville's defensive front 7 is very tough, and they can generate pressure just by rushing 4. So if you can't run the ball, got to pass it more. This offensive line, can they hold up against the pressure that Bronxville can really, deliver for you? Because they have some weapons, and Fiore and Francis on the receiving end, and Kaplan has made some impressive plays, and he's cleaned the ball up a little bit more these past couple weeks. So that's what I'm looking offensively. Defensively, Francis had an INT last week, had a fumble recovery touchdown last time they played. He's kind of been a menace on both sides of the ball for Ardsley, but it starts with stopping the run. Can they do that with this defensive line that's got a good mix of some size and also just they're relentless up there with the Speckman and crew. Can they stop the run against the size and physicality of Bronxville is going to be huge. If they can, I do think this secondary can hold up relatively well. Thoughts on Ardsley, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like Ardsley has been one of those toughest opponents to play all season long, and they've always been in games. I said this before, and I think I said it a few weeks ago. Ardsley just reminds me of my New York Jets, and that we just find ways to really can't close out these games. But when they can, Ardsley becomes one of the most dangerous opponents in all of B, right? Because they have the size, they have the skill, they just have this ability to just turn the ball over when they shouldn't or when they can't. And it's something that happened all season long. And they pulled off a big win against Pearl River, the upset to keep going. But the idea was that I always said that Ardsley was extremely dangerous because they're just one of those gritty teams that just find ways they find ways to lose. But they
find ways to stay in games and they find ways to lose.
Yeah, they find ways to stay in games and they find ways to lose. But I just feel like they've just been super dangerous all year long.
Yeah. And now we talk about Bronxville, and they won 42-7 versus Rhinebeck. Haven't really played a bunch of competitive games. They haven't played a close game. So what happens if the game does get close? How does this team react? It's been so long. Offensively, it starts with this offensive line. Guys like O'Neal, Schmidt, Frigione, McSherry, Morso. They have been dominant up front. And then we bring in these tight ends like Moore, who can catch passes off of play action, but he's also like an addition to that O-line. They got tight ends and offensive line who can win at the point of attack. And then they have these backs in Patterson and Formato, who has been such an impressive duo, make a lot of plays for you. And then the play action out of that stuff, with their quarterback. And when they played Ardsley, they did a really good job attacking the C gap, which worked really well last time. So looking for them to attack that again, try to get a bunch of down blocks at the point of attack, moving that front, right? They're not really going to run B to B. They're going to run C and towards the outside with these condensed formations and get speedy guys like Patterson and Formato on the edge. That to me is probably the big thing, and then play action out of that. But they did have turnovers last time they played Ardsley, and then that led to one of them was a touchdown, and kept Ardsley in the game, gave them opportunities. So that's going to be super important to protect the ball. Look for them to take some deep shots down the field to keep this defense. Again, they want to give the secondary, playing off coverage so that they can run the ball. Defensively, this front seven is a force. You can see they do a really good job of stopping the run, and then they only have to rush 4 and drop 7, and they can get to the quarterback, which leads to some interceptions and some negative plays. So if ours is going to try to throw the ball over them, look for them to rush 4, drop 7, and try to, again, cause some havoc for their young quarterback that can lead to mistakes. Thoughts on Bronxville?
Yeah, Bronxville has been dominant, right? And I feel like there's not a lot of games that have been close. And one of the key ones was against Ardsley. And I felt like they've just been one of those complete teams with size, speed, and strength that just been owning up front. And defensively, they've been playing so well, right? And I mean, the big question is going to be, how do they react playing Ardsley a second time? Is this going to be a Bronxville team that is angry, right? That says this game should not have been close, and we're going to treat this as such, that we're going to show that this is a fluke, right? And so I'm wondering how they're going to react to that.
Yeah, I agree. But I do want to show some film. Let's show a little bit of film. I want to talk about this Ardsley pass attack and this Bronxville defense. So let's tune into that now. You guys can see my screen.
Yep.
And let's start with Ardsley and some of the things they did last time versus Bronxville, which I think, again, you could see happening again. And you can see they got a tight end wing to the left, 2 receivers to the right. So you're getting these condensed formations, and they're going to throw out of it. Right? They got 8 guys in here, and they're all going to be blocking, right? So you're getting max protection against a defensive front that does a really good job of generating pressure. Okay, we'll get some added blockers and see if these R2 receivers can win their one-on-one matchups. Now you got this edge defender who's going to try to do, get under the number 2 receiver, but makes it simple read for the quarterback. Who's going to generate some space? Can I catch the ball and throw it? I got max protection, so don't worry about the pressure. Look at him hike it. Good route by the outside receiver, and see if these guys who are pretty good can make some plays. Look at him. He makes one guy miss. Great block out there. Leads to this long touchdown. Right? So you get these condensed formations that can do play action out of it, which you've seen in the last few weeks. Against Bronxville, can I hike the ball, hit these quick throws, see if my playmakers can make some plays in space? That's another way to attack this defense by giving you some extra blockers as well. Now, if this offensive line can hold up, which at times versus Bronxville, they did a good job. You can see this is more spread. They got 2 receivers to the left, 2 receivers to the right. It's 3rd down and medium, or you could say long, I guess, if it's 7. But what this offense is going to do, again, here's the route combination. They're only going to have 5 blockers because the running back is going to be kind of their safety valve. He's going to bubble out, but these are the two different combinations. And the quarterback's going to look to his left first, right? So he's trying to go left. Defense does a good job of covering it. So now he's got to go to his right. He's going to look towards his right. But look at the O-line holding up. Because Bronxville does such a good job where if you take away his first read, they usually get home. But this is a great rep by the O-line. Look, he looks to the left. It's not there. Okay, look to the right. But the defense does a pretty good job right here. They take away 2 receivers. Because it's a scramble drill, because Ardsley's got some good athletes to the outside, it's hard to cover these guys for a long time. And so their quarterback buys some time, finds the receiver. Look at that right there coming across. And great throw on the money. I mean, if this offensive line can hold up, and you're going to see a mix of Ardsley giving you condensed formations throwing it, going to the spread throwing it. I tell you what, Ardsley can make you pay. I mean, we've seen it throughout the season. On the other side, though, this defense, boy, they make it hard for you because their ability to win by only rushing 4 and dropping 7 is a real weapon for this defense. And this is one of those reps right here against Ardsley. You're going to see this right here. Again, they're going to drop 7. And you're going to see they got 3 defenders towards the 3 receiver side, a middle high safety, and they're going to play one-on-one with this guy out here. But the middle safety, again, if the quarterback shows, he could cheat that way. And these linebackers are going to drop to hook the curl. Again, they're bailing out here to defend the pass because they believe these front 4 can get home without an additional linebacker or an additional blitz. And they do. Here's the route combination right here. And they win with the secondary executing and the defensive line executing. Again, look at the secondary. They're trying to hit this guy over the middle. Safety sees that. He's going to attack it. The linebacker does a good job of dislodging this route, making him go a little bit wide. It means the quarterback's got to hold on to the ball a little longer than he wanted to. But again, they take away that first read. They attack the quarterback, forces the fumble, leads to a turnover. And it's the combination of this defensive line, only rushing 4, and the secondary executing their coverage that leads to this turnover. So let's talk about another one. Again, Ardsley does a little something smart here. So, okay, they gave you trips one side, single receiver backside. Now let's go empty because they want to pull this middle safety to the number 2 receiver side. So now you got 3 receivers to the right, 2 to the left, no middle safety. So Ardsley's saying, okay, we can attack the middle now. We could split the safety here. Because they're running a zone that way. You got 2 defenders to the bottom of the screen. These linebackers you know are going to be in hook to curl spots. So they're going to track the middle of that field, but the linebackers, watch what they do. They do a good job of, again, dislodging the routes. And this is the route combination here. Trying to attack the middle. But watch this linebacker again. Look at him jam him to the inside. Right? If he went to the back of the linebacker, you're going to see right here while these guys close where this ball goes. He tries to throw it. It's a little high. Linebacker did a good job disrupting. You saw the pressure by the D-line. Goes through the hands, leads to an INT. It's just the little thing. This defensive line winning up front with just 4. The linebackers dislodging routes. The timing being a little off because you've been facing pressure. This is the kind of things that Bronxville can do that they have done all year long. And even against Ardsley last time, look for them to duplicate that this time around. Mars, who do you got winning and why?
This game is definitely tough. And I will say that Ardsley is, in the last few weeks, have been grinding and clawing their way into the playoffs. And they have been very impressive. Not a lot of teams picked Ardsley to upset Pearl River.
We did.
Sorry, not a lot of teams. Yeah, we picked them. But not a lot of people did, right? And the point is that we can tell that Ardsley is one of those teams that really can pull it off, right? Bronxville has been one of those teams that have been dominant, and I remember you calling that Bronxville was going to be a very good team at the start of the year, but not a lot of teams expected Bronxville to dominate the way they have been.
Yeah, they had not a close game.
Yeah, and maybe I'm going to be crazy, but I'm going to go with Ardsley to pull the upset. The reasoning why, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, is that Ardsley has been going through the gauntlet, and they've been battling with the top teams in all of B, right? And they've been keeping every game has been close.
Yeah.
And they have been a few bad decisions away from being one of the top teams in B, rather than being a 4-4 team. And I feel like a team that is that good to keep every game close, even against Bronxville, right? That's a very tough team to beat, especially in the playoffs when everything's on the line. When you're playing against a team like that in the regular season, yeah, you know what? You lose the game, you move on to the next week. But when you have a sign of desperation and you have a sign where a team needs to win, that brings out an entirely new beast, right? And Ardsley is one of the toughest teams to play against this year. Brownsville might come into this game feeling a little like, oh, we just steamrolled past Rhinebeck. You know, we might be feeling a little hot, up on ourselves right now. Ardsley's not. Ardsley's gonna be grinding for this win, just like every other week they've been grinding. So I'm gonna go with Ardsley. I think the upset's coming. I could be wrong, but I'm just gonna stick with Ardsley here.
Well, you know, we picked the upset against Ardsley because it's tough to beat a team 2 times in a season. It's also very tough to play a team back-to-back weeks. Now, they haven't played each other for a while, so you're going to see a Bronxville team that hasn't played a close game. Now, a game gets very close. Interested to see how Bronxville, handles a close game because they haven't been in much. Ardsley has. Ardsley's been in a bunch of close games. Some that they've won, some that they've lost. So they've been on both sides of it. But I will say this. I hear what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense to me. But I still think Bronxville, they did play a close game versus Ardsley, and they made the necessary plays to win that game. I know there was some controversy at the end, but Bronxville made the necessary plays to win at the end. And to me, it's their ability to rush the passer with 4 guys and stop the run, which makes it going to be hard unless Ardsley is super efficient passing the ball, which they could be, but at times they still turn the ball over. And that's kind of the Achilles heel for Ardsley that's been there all year. And I find it hard to believe that it's going to be completely disappeared from this very big and physical defense of Bronxville. And because of that, because they have to go to Bronxville, last time they played it was at Ardsley, right? So now they have to go to Bronxville. I think Bronxville's going to win. All right, let's go to the final stretch. We have our C-D matchup. Now, just want to make it clear, Woodlands canceled the game versus Valhalla, so Valhalla is automatically going to the section title.
Are we counting that toward our overall record? Are we counting toward our record? Is it?
No, it doesn't. It counts as a push because they didn't play. But I want to give a shout out Valhalla making the section title game, so congratulations to them. But let's go to the other matchup, and this is a very interesting one as well. The number 3 seed Dobbs Ferry, who's 5-3, at the number 2 seed Putt Valley, who's also 5-3. They played week 7, where Putt Valley won 62-35. Dobbs Ferry last week, they won 27-0 versus Haldane. And listen, offensively, they've been impressive all year offensively. They can run the ball. They have multiple guys who can make plays for you. Their quarterback and Hardnett, obviously being the orchestrator, but guys like O'Connor have been big playmakers. Kearns, is probably one of the more versatile weapons in that class, and so important for Dobbs Ferry offensively. Now, the last time they played Putt Valley, they did move the ball. I mean, they scored, 35 points. So they moved the ball. They hit some big plays. They scored on some really nice touchdowns. The question to me, offensively, I think you're going to see a lot of similar stuff here. Try to get out of the edge on Putt Valley. Use your speed here. This offensive line at times can show that they are very physical. The big concern is defensively because, last week was a really nice rebound. They get the shutout. They definitely stepped up. But when they played Putt Valley, like I said before, they gave them 62 points and over 500 yards. I mean, they could not stop anything. And that included 5 passing touchdowns. So, to me, it was giving up the big plays, giving up plays to the outside. And we've seen at times Dobbs Ferry has struggled to do that. They try to take away the middle, they give up the outside. They try to bail to the outside, you start seeing some big chunk plays given up. But they've given up big plays in the run game and in the passing game. So they have to be a lot better. You need to see more of the Dobbs Ferry last week than you did 2 weeks ago. For Putt Valley, they lost 66-35 versus Valhalla. And that, in the beginning of that game, and I'll let you talk about both Morrison at the end because I kind of jumped the gun. But
yeah, you're all good.
But it was like a college football game early on last week between Valhalla and Putt Valley. When you look at them offensively, Dobra has been really good. He's had 8 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He's been really good. He's been accurate. He's been decisive. He's been efficient. And Caden Glenn, obviously, being one of the best players to me in Section 1, such a versatile weapon, such an important two-way player. But him running the ball, him as a receiver, when he's a guy who steps on the field, he's one of the top 2 or 3 best players playing football that day on that football field. So he is super important to this team. Get him the ball running, get him the ball throwing. But other guys like Constantino and Tehran have also made some big plays. So this offense has shown that, they have multiple weapons. That quarterback play has been strong. Can this offensive line, handle things up front is the big question to me. And defensively, they started off strong last week, but overall, I got to be honest, I thought they were pretty bad. They gave up way too many big plays. And they've given up, 100 points now the last 2 weeks for Putt Valley. So they have to do a much better job. Even against Dobbs Ferry, they gave up a lot of plays. They scored a lot of points. They also gave up a lot of plays defensively. So, they gave up 300 yards rushing. I think close to over 300 last week. So against now Dobbs Ferry, where they can run the ball, that's got to be better, right? So they have to do a much better job of preventing big plays defensively. Mars, thoughts on this matchup, and you can pick it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at both these games, what's mind-numbing to me is, I picked Dobbs Ferry in that Putt Valley game that they played, and that was brutal. That was one of the ones when I was checking updates, I just said, "Oh man, like that's rough." And I kind of had to do self-reflection after that. I had to think to myself, I do like the way Dobbs Ferry always plays, extremely aggressive. Offensive line is always trying to move people around. This time possession for Dobbs Ferry is always in their favor. And they always play tough. But when I look at Putt Valley and I go, wow, they are scoring at will against Dobbs Ferry, it is unimaginable. How many times do you really see a 60 burger dropped on a team? Not only did Putt Valley drop a 60 burger against Dobbs Ferry, but then they gave up a 60 burger against Valhalla. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a weird scenario here. And when you try to kind of compare teams, you say, well, Valhalla seems to be the team to beat, right? And obviously in C, right? And so I'm like in a conundrum. It's hard for me to pick this game, but I'm going to go with Putt Valley. I'm not going to be burned twice on the same matchup again, and I get it. When you play a team twice, it's harder to beat them. But I just feel like Putt Valley's offense is very good. I agree their defense has been struggling. You're giving up at least
100 points in 2 games.
Almost 101 points in the last 2 games, which is unheard of. If you got to step up defensively, but offensively they are very impressive, right? And Caden Glenn is obviously a very impressive athlete, and so I just feel like Dobbs Ferry, unless their defense has some sort of an awakening, it's going to be really tough to slow down this Putt Valley offense. So I'm going to go with Putt Valley.
I agree with you. I think these are 2 high-powered offenses who can move the ball and score a lot of points. It's which one can play better defense. And I know Dobbs Ferry had a nice bounce back last week. That was against more of a struggling offense in Haldane instead of this Putt Valley offense. So to me, I do think Putt Valley's defense has to be better. I think they will be better, and I think they're going to win this game. All right, Mars, the final game. We're going to have a champion after this week, and that's with the Hudson Valley Football League. And that's the number 2 seed Greeley, who's 7-1, at the number 1 seed Tappan Zee, who's 8-1. They played each other back in week 3, where Tappan Zee won 38-13. And when we start with Greeley, Mars, they won 28-6 versus Panis. Offensively, things are going to look very different because they lost their starting quarterback last week in Julian Osh, who's so important and has had a really strong season this year. So it's a huge blow for Greeley, and it's really going to change the way this offense operates. And probably that starts with what we saw last week, which was Blakesley had to move to the quarterback spot. He had a passing touchdown, but the big thing that they're going to have to do is rely on the run game. Blakesley's a very good athlete. Now you can see run plays with the quarterback. Similar, that they could fill that Osh role running the ball at the quarterback spot, but can they generate those big plays passing is going to be a big question. So they're going to have to run the ball, whether that's with Blakesley, whether that's with Sala, who ran the ball very well last week at 144 yards. He had 4 total touchdowns. He was really good for them. And this offensive line, how do they handle this defensive front 7 of Tappan Zee is very aggressive. They're hard to move, but they're going to have to win up front because they got to run the ball, man. They're going to have to run the ball for 2 reasons. They lost their big play quarterback, but secondly, Tappan Zee's offense has been really good. So you want to prevent them from getting on the field. They're going to have to change because, Greeley they were like a great show on turf type of offense. They put up a lot of points, hit a lot of big plays. Now they got to slow the game down. That's got to be their big kind of focus. And speaking of coach, that's kind of the big thing is running the football. So, they got to be gritty. They got to be physical. And you can mix that in with some of those kind of rollout passes, sprint out passes with Blakesley that you saw at times him do last week, but getting him out on the edge where he can use, hit some of these, easy read throws or take off and run. That's kind of going to be the thing offensively. Defensively, Kaplo and Woolard are really leading the way for this defense. They have to stop the run. This defensive front seven, last time they played Tappan Zee, they were trying to mess with Greeley by using motions to try to mess with the linebacker's eyes and then run kind of counter action out of that, and then trying to generate these one-on-one matchups where they hit some of the deep balls. So, again, taking away everything from the Tappan Zee offense is tough to do. Where you start with is stopping the run and challenging this Tappan Zee offensive line that has been really strong. Thoughts on Greeley, Mars? Then we'll do Tappan Zee.
Yeah, I feel like obviously it's heartbreaking when you hear about Osh being injured, and for Greeley losing two major athletes throughout the year is tough, right? To rebound from, and so they adapted well. They still pulled off with the win, and Blakesley obviously stepped into a tough spot, and he did a good job. So I agree with you. It honestly would be better if the offense to slow it down, try to get that time possession, and offensive line really needs to step it up this week.
Yeah, for Tappan Zee, they won 36-0 versus Peekskill. They're back in the championship game back-to-back years. They lost last year. This is their opportunity now to win, and they're in back-to-back years. Coach talked about it, how it's great to be back. They were so close last year. Now they have another opportunity this time to be champions. And offensively, this offensive line does a really good job of controlling the point of attack, and they run the ball very well with Tofa. He had 218 yards last week and 3 touchdowns. And that quarterback Cavalian with these weapons like Murray, Piccioni, Martinez, Rubin, they've hit some big plays throughout the year. And they liked, again, like I mentioned, getting motion to kind of mess with the defender's eyes, but also to get receivers on an island with a corner that they can attack down the field with them. They like to use motion for that as well. So anticipate to see a lot of that. And again, getting one-on-one opportunities if Greeley wants to bring pressure off the edge. It's going to be there for them. So can they execute is going to be the big question. Defensively, if this defensive line that's done a really good job of taking over games, this defensive line, linebackers, if they could slow down this Greeley offense running the football, how does Greeley generate those plays passing? And that's the kind of thing Tappan Zee wants to take away. Because this secondary has, they had an INT touchdown the last time they played, and that was with their starting quarterback. So backup quarterback comes in, having to throw the ball second, third, and long. It feels good for this Tappan Zee defense if they can get in that scenario. Thoughts, Mars?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Tappan Zee's defense's goal should be to send a lot of heat, really try to get in Blakesley's head, and obviously, like I said, he's stepping into a really tough spot, right? And now, if you try to force him to make some really tough decisions, there's a chance you can make a mistake, and that leads to turnovers.
Yeah. All right, Mars. Last film session of the night. I want to talk about this Greeley offense and this Tappan Zee offense, and pull it up here. We're going to pick the game afterwards, and then the show is done. And I want to start again with Greeley. And losing your starting quarterback is brutal. There's no question about it. And it's changed their identity to more of a running team, which they did well last week. And it starts up front with the offensive line, these fullbacks, and the running back running downhill. And you can see they got two kind of fullbacks here. They're going into heavy sets. They're going to replace the two linemen pulling. But again, if your eyes are focused on these H-backs, and they're stepping in one direction, is trying to pull linebackers to step in the wrong direction. Another important detail I mentioned earlier in the show, running back is now going to step, instead of straight, he's going to step to his left and then bend it right. And it's so important because they're trying to mess with these linebackers and set them up for a block. So you're going to see right here, look at him step that way, and both these linebackers step in the wrong direction. They're not seeing those linemen pull the opposite way, right, with the cross flow read right here. So they're reading flow one direction, and these linemen are pulling in the opposite direction because he's going to bend it that way. And so the offense succeeds here by getting the eyes of these linebackers in the wrong direction. They're stepping in the wrong direction, and he bends it back. And look at the hole that opens up. Good kick-out block here, and this is where they're going to have to execute. Mess with these linebackers from the other team, attack downhill, win up front at the point of attack, and guys like Salah running the ball hard. Those are going to be the big things to me, running the football. But the question I have is, can they make enough plays in the passing game? So here's an example right here. Going to the standard thing Greeley likes to do, give you some bunch, give you some trips, roll out to it, and that's what they're going to do right here. And so you got a backup quarterback, get him out on the edge. Get him out on the edge so that he can see some easy reads and run if he needs to. And so here he is, Blakesley going to his right. He sees this easy read right here, this number three receiver winning. The defender's too far inside. He sees that. Nice little flick right there. And then again, let your athletes win. Let the athletes win their matchup. And he does that right there. Makes a good read, good throw, win those one-on-one reps. And keeping a defense honest. Then we go to the other side and tap and Z. And again, they'll come out in the spread. They'll give you the motions trying to mess with their defenses. And last time they played Greeley, they did a good job of it. You'll see an example here. They're going to motion this guy. You can see the defender going with him. And they're going to be pulling linemen back on a counter run. And so what they are, look at the linebackers here. First off, great job at the point of attack. They've done this all year where they get the movement at the point of attack on these down blocks. You can see it right here. You get good movement here. You see the linebacker stepping in the wrong direction, and that's exactly what they want to get. They win at the point of attack. These linemen pulling, got good feet. They get on their blocks, get the running back to the second level, and let guys like Tofa win at the second level, making guys miss. He runs hard. And you can see that was successful for them last time. Expect to see that again coming this time around. But they'll also motion to get guys one-on-one on an island. Here we go again. Similar formations, right? That we saw last play. And again, you can see Greeley's now bringing the guy off the edge. They got 5 guys on the line of scrimmage with 2 backers. You're going to get this one-on-one coverage, especially if they motion this guy across. Look at the DB go with him. He's going to go with the motion, which means this wide receiver and this DB are one-on-one on an island. If they can protect the quarterback, give him a little time, which they do right here. Right, look at the pocket they have, and watch the throw. You give them this kind of time and space with these weapons, leads to these beautiful type of throws. Going to be very interesting, Mars. Who is going to be the Hudson Valley Football League champion?
This is definitely a tough one. And mainly because I know that both these teams were, and I can kind of see it early on, both these teams were easily the number 1 and number 2 teams in the HVFL. And you saw that with the efficiency of these offenses, the defenses being very aggressive, and just in stats all around, they have been playing the top tiers of both these, of the entire league, right? And I feel like if Greeley had full health, right, they didn't lose any of their athletes and players, then I would say this is going to be a game, and I would have picked Greeley in that case because they would have been at full strength, playing them a second time. It could have been a completely different showdown. But this time, they don't have that. And I feel like because of that reason, I'm going to go with Tappan Z. Tappan Z has been proven to be one of the most dominant teams in the HVFL, if not the most toughest team to beat. And that's seen with their offensive capabilities, but mainly their defense. And I just feel like they just have too much, right, to really be able to be stopped right now, especially with how Greeley's lost a lot of guys. And I think they're going to be competitive early on in this game, but I also think that Tappan Z is going to put the pressure on. And I feel like there's going to be some turnovers. They're going to get the ball, make some big plays, and I just think they're going to pull away. But I think Tappan Z is going to win this game. I think Greeley had a great year, and I think that the injury bug caught up with them.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make excuses for teams, and I do think if Greeley was at full health, I think it'd be a closer game. But Tappan Z, to me, has shown that they have been the best team the entire year. They play really good complementary football. They can win on both sides of the ball. And even at Greeley at full strength, I still think Tappan Z, which they've proven, can beat them before. But even then, I still think Tappan Z, coming back to the championship game for a second time around, I feel like the moment is there for them. And now with Greeley down a couple big-time players, it's even more an opportunity. And I think Tappan Z takes advantage, and they become a HVFL champion. All right, everyone, that was our show. Thank you guys so much. As always, we really do appreciate you guys. If you haven't done so yet, hit that thumbs up, hit that sub button, share it. If this guy, again, you can rewatch it. We appreciate you guys. As always, the future is always uncertain, but we enjoy entertaining you guys, talking football with you guys, and we've really enjoyed this season so far. So with that, enjoy the games. We're going to be watching all of them, and we'll see you all very soon.